Yeah. Kumlan about Gemara. We're up to Daf Nun Gimel Amud Aleph. Turn to the top of the page. We're still talking about the Sukkah Daf. We're saying that there were a number of menorahs in the base of Mikdash. Some say 2, some say 4, some say who knows how many. And there was so much light that came from there that every courtyard was able to see from that light. We said there were 50 amas tall. They were very tall, so they basically illuminated the entire Yerushalayim. And the Gemara says, to what extent was it? Isha Haisa, that a woman could have gone ahead and sorted out her wheat. It could have run to the light that was emanating from the base of She'eva. Questionable whether they actually allowed to, because even though there's no using the base, no stealing the base of Mikdash when it comes to, let's say, to seeing or to sound or sight or smell, but it still might be awesome with the Rabbanah. So Tracy wants to say that only means that they were able to, not that they actually did. Chassidim Anshe Maisa, and we started talking about that they used to rejoice, and then they used to chant certain things, and they used to sing. The Gemara now will tell us exactly what happened at that time and what there were these Chassidim and Anshe Maisa. Who were they? And they were dancing, and they had all kinds of torches in their hand. What actually happened? Says the Gemara. From what we learned, Yesh man. I mean, there were those group. There was a group of the population. For Nun Gimel and Aleph, 2 lines from the top. Torah we learned. So these Chassidim and Anshe Maisa, men of good deeds, they were singing and chanting. They were Yeshman Aimim. Those of them were saying, these are the Chassidim. Ashrei Yavusenu, praiseworthy is our youth. Shalai Baisha Zik Nesenu, that didn't shame our old age. In other words, we were Eile Chassidim. These were people who were I guess Chassidim from the birth till today. The Anshe Maisa and those people who were Anshe Maisa, sorry, these are Chassidim Anshe Maisa. The Yeshmen, I mean, there were those who said, Ashrei Zikneseinu, praiseworthy. We're 4 lines on top of the page, and on Gimel Rav. Ashrei Zikneseinu, praiseworthy is our old age. Kippur Shel Vaseinu, that will atone for the way we behaved when we were young. These are Balei Tshuva. So they had different songs. Each one emphasized their current situation. And I mean, but they both said together, and there's a famous Lubavitcher song, Asher Mishal Chater, praiseworthy somebody who didn't sin, or Misha Chater, and we did sin, Yoshu V'Yimchla. Yes, do tshuva, and Hashem will forgive you. Tanya, we learned, Amru Olav al Hila Zakin, they said regarding Hila Zakin, when he rejoiced at Simchas Beis She'eva, Amar Ken, he would say the following, Im Anikan, if I am here, Hakokan, everybody's here. Im Ein Nikan, if I'm not here, Mikan, who is here? Now, this is an extraordinary thing for Hillel HaZaken, such a humble person, as we've learned in the Gemara, a number of occasions, would be the one to say such a thing. Im Anikan Hakokan. So Rashi is bothered by that, and Rashi therefore learns he's speaking on behalf of Hashem. And he's saying on behalf of Hashem, if I am here, if I'm happy with the base of Mikdash, if I'm here, then you can all be here and we'll all be happy together. But if I'm not here, then what are you going to have to go to? So the Gemara further. Or Taisa says he's speaking on behalf of Klal Yisrael. He's speaking on behalf of Klal Yisrael, that if we're here, they were talking about, then the Abish is here, everybody's happy, exactly the opposite. And then the Gemara continues. Then he says, who are you? I mean, also would say, the place that I want to be, that's where my legs take me to. Same thing over here also, he's speaking on behalf of the Eibishter, and so on and so forth. And say, if you come to my house, the Eibishter is saying, this is how naturally the Eibishter is saying, if the Shul is saying on behalf of Hashem, if you come to visit my house, to my base of Mikdash, to my Shul, I'll come and visit your house. If you don't come to visit my house, then I will not come to visit you in your house. She never said, I should ask wherever I allow you to mention my name, I will come and I will bench you. He once saw a skull, floating on the water. This is a Mishnah in Big Yavus. Amala, he said, he spoke to the skull. Al the atafet, because you drowned somebody, atfuch, you were drowned in return. In other words, measure immediate midah. Umatifich, and those that drowned you, yitufun, they'll also be drowned eventually. It's a difficult mission to understand, because then the first person who died, how did that happen? Like Cain and Hevel. Hevel died. You're saying that every time somebody dies, because they deserve it, because they killed somebody else. So the very first person, how did that happen? So Rashi therefore seems to be saying that this doesn't apply everywhere. Rashi says, what do you call it? He saw this guy floating. He saw this head floating in the water, and he knew this person to be a murderer. So why does Rashi have to say that? Because Rashi seems to be bothered with the same question. So it doesn't always work. But where he knows the guy was a murderer, and then he sees the guy dead, he says, "Oh, I know why you died, because of this reason." Because there are plenty, as some of the Shaitim Master, plenty of murderers who don't die. They die of old age. He's not saying it happens to everybody. There are different cheshbonos. This particular person who knows that he's a murderer, and then he found him murdered, he's telling him why this happened. I don't be after like but that the feet of a person are basically responsible for him. The person where he has to end up. Let's say he has to die. Tamam, my villain, your legs are eventually bring you there so that you can die where you're supposed to. It's a story. Handle tar to kashay. There was these two kashaym. Rashi doesn't translate kashaym as meaning normally Ethiopians, because why would Shlomo? They were kind of Shlomo that they were standing for Shlomo alicharef v'achaya b'nei shisha seif in the Shlomo. He would have described the Shlomo. So Rashi therefore says kashaym means they're very handsome. That they're very handsome, just like Rashi the Chumash. Nobody questions that the dark is dark. Nobody questions that these people are very handsome. And what's the relevance of that? That they're very handsome. I'm not sure exactly. There's one day, Shlomo saw the Malchamav was depressed. Why are you so depressed? Why are you sad? I need to kill these two people that are standing here. And obviously I can't, because they were not meant to die here in Shalim. Shlomo thought al-Smat and Malchamavas. Maserinulus Edim. Shlomo was in charge of the demons. He gave them over to the demons. The demons take care of these people. They brought them over to the city of Luz, where we learned in the city of Luz, where nobody died in that city. They always told the truth and everything else. When they came to the city of Luz, Shechivu, that's where they killed, because that's where they're supposed to die, right by the entrance of the city of Luz. The following day, he saw the Malchamavas. He appeared to be happy. Amalei said to him, "Why are you happy?" Amalei da'asar, the boy minoi tamal shadetilu. Exactly where I needed them to be. You did me a favor. You sent them there. Yad pasach shleim amar. That's what Shlomo said. That the feet of a person's legs, inun areva bay. They are responsible for him to the heaven. Like guarantors. Lasad, the midboy, the place where the person has to pass away, Tamon Mavilin Yase, they will bring him to that place. Now going back to the dancing and the performances that they did in Sheva time, we learned Amru all of Arab Shimon Gamlil. We said about Arab Shimon Gamlil, the Nasi Kishahi Sameach Simcha Beis HaShe'eva, when he rejoiced, he wasn't just sitting there observing, he was a participant. He was an active participant. He would take 8 torches of 8 torches of fire. He would throw one up and take one. He was juggling 8 torches. Usually you see out there 3, 4. This is 8, and lit torches. And then he would prostrate himself. He would put his 2 thumbs on the ground and put his whole body weight on his thumbs. The sheicha would bend down, when he kissed the ritzvah, the floor, the zayke, they would stand up. The ain't called better the vast majority of people could not replicate this. The zuhi keda, this is referred to when we say keda. It says in the Chumash that this is keda lapayim, this is what it was. It was only putting down his face, and only those who knew how to do it would do it. And it says in the time of Shimon Gamliel, no one knew how to do this, only him. Levi wants to demonstrate. Levi wanted to show Rebbe how this is done. The itla, and he dislocated himself in his hip or something, and he began to limp, because since he picked himself up the wrong way, and his entire weight is was on his thumb and basically on his legs, and somehow or another the weight ended up, the center of gravity was on his hip, and it dislocated it. Says that's why he started limping. A person should not complain and use very sharp words against Hashem. When there was a drought, Levi said very sharp words to the Eibishter. He said to the Eibishter, "You're sitting up in the heaven and you have no idea, you don't even care what's happening to your children down here in heaven." Very strong words, harsh words. Levi used some very choice words against the Eibishter, and he caused them to become a limp. He became a limp. Or Mani Levi. So which incident is it that caused it? So both incidents together. He saw those words against Hashem, but then when he was vulnerable, it dislocated it. As Rashi says, when an animal is lying on the ground, a saying we had, when an animal is lying on the ground, he's much more vulnerable. It's easier to go ahead and shaft. So here also, when he deserved to be punished, and when he's doing his push-ups, his keda, that's when he dislocated it because he was vulnerable then. Levi hamitayel kamei de Rebbe. Levi used to juggle before Rebbe. The tamle sakini with 8 knives. And Rashi tells us that Rebbe generally was depressed, and Levi came to him to make it to be happy, to him bring some joy in his life. And why was Rebbe distressed always? So Rashi says he was always worried about the tzaddis that were about to befall the Jewish nation. Plus, he had his own personal issues, and it says that actually we're learning more Durham. When Rebbe smiles, the whole world's in trouble. So he was not very happy. He was always in a state of stress. So Levi went to rejoicing. Shmuel, Kamei Shava Malko. Shmuel used to perform before Shava of the king. The Tamne Mazge Chamu, 8 cups of wine, glasses of wine, full of wine. I never spilled a drop. I mean, these performances outdo any performance we see today. Abaye Kamei, the Rabbi, Abaye would present himself before his teacher, Rabbi. The Tamne, they would use 8 eggs. And remember, if you catch me even a little bit of an angle, it'll crack. It never cracked. I'm the other side, Rabbi, 4 eggs. Everything here was done in number 8, and except one opinion was 4, but everything else, everything was 8 torches, 8 glasses of wine, and perhaps the idea is that, or 8 knives, or 8 eggs. The idea is 8 is l'mayla min hachol, 8 l'mayla teva, 7 represents teva, and 8 represents l'mayla min teva. They were trying to I guess allude to the fact that we Eden are not born of the laws of nature. We stand above the laws of nature, and therefore we have to be depressed. You can be happy, regardless of your current situation. When we rejoice, we didn't sleep at all. Kate said, "How did that work?" The first moment, first thing is we did Tamid Shel Shachar. Misham from there, from there, we all went to daven. Misham from there, the Karban Musaf, we brought a Karban Musaf based in English, and then Misham went to Musaf. From here, the Acharayim talk about, it seemed that even at the times of the base of English, and even while they broke a bonus, and even those people who were standing in the base of English already went to Shul to daven. What exactly they davened? They couldn't say like we say over Sachazen and Nenu, but they davened. Whatever the davening was in that day. So it seems clear. Misham the base of Medrash, then they went to Shul to base of Medrash to learn. Then Misham Lachil Shul, then went to eat and drink. So they were really fasting every day till quite late. Misham L'Tfilas Mincha. From there they went to Tfilas Mincha. And Misham L'Tamid Shabbat Abayim. So interesting. The other tefillas, first they brought the carbon, then they went to daven. The problem why some people thought they didn't daven in those days is because remembering more brachas, we learned that tefillas connected to Tmidim Siddur. The davening replaces the karbanos. But they had the karbanos. Why in the world would they daven? So others say no. It doesn't say tefillin b'makom karbanos. It says connected tefillas siddur. That the davening, what times we do is at times of the karbanos. But the actual davening itself, it is not represent karbanos because the others take them, and therefore even the time of karbanos they used to daven as well. Now by mincha, they used to daven mincha before the carbon. All the other karbanos, first they brought the carbon, then they followed up by daven shachos musaf. But mincha is all the way around. And possibly the reason is because at mincha we have 2 times. We have the earliest time and the later time. It's actually questionable when is a better time to have mincha. The mincha gedolah or the mincha ketana. And the Rambam writes in his time they used to daven mincha twice. So then they used to daven one the main mincha, and the other one they did tefillah and double. So maybe we daven mincha before the later mincha, so this way we can have the benefit of both minchas. The mincha, the
Well,
earliest.
also, the shlomim was meant to be the last thing. Olav hashlomim that should be shalom.
Yeah. That's true. That is going to be the last carbon, but could very well be. So that's exactly it. Could be they daven the shachris after, because that's to be the first carbon. And this is after. Yeah, could be as well. Then the rest of the night they rejoiced. Simchas Beis Hashem. Says about Aini. So you're telling me basically you never slept. Aini, it's not so. Someone makes a shvuah. You will not sleep for 3 days. Malkin Oisei. It's a shvuah that's for naught. It's a shvuah shav. It's impossible to keep. And the Yeshua will give you a lashes straight away. Could be a rain. It's impossible to abide by it, and you can go sleep straight away. So how could they say 3 days? Because they didn't sleep. We didn't sleep, mamish. We slept on each other's shoulders. This is one of the proofs that you're allowed to sleep outside of a sukkah, because here they did catnaps on other people's shoulders, and obviously it was good enough as if they slept. And then we had before, you shouldn't even sleep as ada, even as a catnap. You should sleep outside of the sukkah. And here they all slept outside of the sukkah. We don't find that they all paused, went into a sukkah, slept for a little, and went back in. So we see that sleeping in the sukkah is very different than eating or drinking. Chamesh Esrei Milas, 15 steps. That's one of those rabbis who used to learn all these galas before. Amalei said to him, Shemila, Hani Chamesh Esrei Milas. Why do you have to say 15 shira milas? David Melech tells us 15 shira milas. Why? Amalei said, when David Melech started to dig the shisin, I remember we learned a few days ago that it was created from Sheshem Reparations. So this Gemara either disagrees that is actually man-made, or it was made Sheshem Reparations, but then got covered with rocks and dirt and everything else. So the Melech was uncovering it. So anyhow, he was digging for the shisin. So he personally was digging for them. So what happened was, Kappa the waters from below started to rise. Threatened to drown the entire world. He said 15 shira miles, and each time he said one, it went down 1,000 amos. So he finished, it went down 15,000 amos. So it didn't flood the world. So Rabbi Chiza said to this rabbi, but instead of saying shir hamalos, which means to lift, he should have said that 15 yardus, 15 different per prakim where they cause the water to go down. This person, actually, you just remind me, it says exactly the opposite. This is what we learned. When Martin started to dig, the Tahima began to rise, to drown the whole world. David said, me, is anybody who knows here, he showed if he allowed to write the name on a piece of clay. And why clay? Because clay sinks, so that I can write the Shem on the even though it would be a waste. And when by the time I toss it into the time so the water should settle down, it shouldn't rise. Rashi said no, knew the answer, but because Achitefel was there with his teacher, he didn't want to pass in front of Achitefel. And technically, the real reason why you're allowed to is because of Gurama, because it was only a cause. Anybody here? Nobody said a word. Amad David. I know that people know. In fact, he knew that his teacher knew. So he didn't want to point out directly to him, but he said, called the Yodel. If anybody knows and refuses to share this halacha, he should be strangled. And in fact, that's Achitefel eventually died when he jumped off. And this is what Donald's curse was. Jumped off the roof. He made make peace with husband and wife. The Abish prepared to erase his name by a site, and they put it in that water. To make peace for the entire world, he should drown. Surely he should be able to. Amalei Shadi, he said you're allowed to. Now, Achitefel didn't want to say to David Melech that he's allowed to. That Gram is being a cause you're allowed to. But finally, when he had to say it, he came up with this reason here. which this region here was used against David Melech. Look, the Abish's name is there to make sure the Shalom Bayis. And you went ahead and you took Basheva, you destroyed the Shalom Bayis. So Achitefel didn't like David Melech. He actually hated him, and therefore he used that reason. And this was going to be used against David Melech. Kosev Shema Chasta. He wrote the name on a piece of a clay shard. He threw it into Tahim. The Nachish Tahim, and the Tahim settled Shitzit Alfregamidi, settled down 16,000 amas, which is way too deep, and the earth became all dry and parched. We saw they went too deep. The higher the water is, the subterranean waters, the world is more fertile, the soil is more fertile. He said 50 share miles. The Aske, and this it went up. It went up 15,000 amas. Settled 1,000 amas below the surface, and therefore the soil is fertile, but the world is no longer being threatened to be flooded. The thickness of the crust of the earth is 1,000 amas before you hit water. Well, Chazina says the Gemara, we see the Karina Purta of plenty of places you can dig boreholes, a lot less than 1,000 amas, and you'll hit water. Those are the ladders of paras. In other words, the offshoots from all the waterways, and the water rises in different places. But the bulk of the water is a minimum of 1,000 amas below. The Kohanim stood there, and then by the upper gate, and then they stopped on the 10th step, and they blew shofar. When you say the 10th step, they only go down 5 steps to the Ezra's Nashim. And on step number 10, that's where they blew the shofar. They climbed down 10 stairs, and they stood on the 5th ring. It's a good question. As usual, Rabbi asks these kind of questions. And tell them what we learned. Since it says, it says in the Pasuk, that they went and their faces were facing east. The plane came, they're facing east. So they're facing east. Obviously, their backs were to the Heichel. Why does the Pasuk have to say their backs were to the Heichel and they're facing east? Why does it say that their backs were facing the Heichel Hashem? That our ancestors, they not only they went facing east, they turned their backs to the Migdash, but they also defecated in front of the base of Migdash, and therefore that's what we're highlighting. We are to Hashem, and to Hashem we lift our eyes. So, how can they say that? You say twice Shema, as if you're saying Moedin twice, and you're not allowed to, as if you're acknowledging the 2 different gods. They went east because they worship the sun. But we are turning to Hashem. And then, as if we're saying, the we're always looking, hoping to Hashem. Said the Gemara, we're talking about they used to blow the shofar, so now we're telling you generally, in the base of Mikdash in total, they blew 21 sounds. The key is considered 1, true is 2, and the key is 3, so there's 7 sets of 3. But the maximum could be on the Yom Tov is 48. The whole yom, which is on Sukkah, every day there's a total of 21, 7 sets. And he explains. 1 set was when they opened the gates. There were 3 sets or 9 blasts. By the carbon, when the Levim used to say this year, they would pause 3 times. But they did 9 in the Tamid Shabbat Abayim. They did 9 in the afternoon as well. They should pause 3 times, and each time they did a full set. And with Musafin, when it came to Musaf, and the day they had Musaf, they would add another Musafin, Oitesh, another 9 for the shear of the Musafin. And again, they would break the shear up into 3 parts. And they would blow, 3 different sets. Shabbos, kept Friday, but like more Shabbos, so in the second page, they go in Musafin Sheish, they would add another 6 blasts. 1 that they should leave the fields, 1 they should close the stores, 1 they should stop putting everything on, getting ready the food. And Shalosh Lahaftas on Malacha 3 to tell the people to stop their work, and Shalosh Lahavdil Ben Keder Zachar, another set of 3 to tell them Shabbos, the onset of Shabbos is imminent. Interesting how Rashi in Rashi says the last set of blasts were to tell people Shabbos is coming, and from now on you'll be chayiv skila for any malacha you do. Everybody wonders because first it's bein hashmashos before we Shabbos. At bein hashmashos there's no skila; it's only later. What does Rashi mean with these words? Erev Shabbos Shabbatei Chag. What about if, let's say, in middle of Yom Tov was Friday? That's when there was a maximum. There's a total of 48. Shalish l'psicha sharim, like we said before, 3 to open the gate, like every day, and a set. Shalish l'shara elyon, 3 when they went to open. We learned before they used to open this to go out from the upper gate and the lower gate, and they used to go march out to draw the water. So we said as soon as this person used to make the announcements to open up, they would make these 3 blasts. The shalish tacht, and then they would go down to the lower gate, and they blew again a set of 3. Shalish lemila mayim, 3 when they filled the water. Shalish l'gab mizbech, and 3 when they were standing by the mizbech. And the Rashi says talking about the arava. They used to place the aravas mizbech. They used to blast. And teisha l'tamid shel shachar. There were 9. They did we learned 4 for the Tamid in the morning, V'teishel Tamid Shabbat 9 for the afternoon, V'teishel Musaf 9 for Musaf, Sholish Lahafta Malacha because it's Friday 3 to tell people to stop working, V'sholish Lahavta Mekeish. So we have an interesting argument. Every time they did a series of shofars, it was 3. It was a series of 3. Tkiya, Trua, Tkiya. Is that considered one mitzvah or 3 separate mitzvahs? Says the Gemara that Masnisi, our Mishnah, seems to be the like Rabbi Yehuda does not follow view Rabbi Yehuda. Why? The Tanya Rabbi Yehuda says, they don't argue the number of tkiyas, they just argue how we count it, how we calculate it.
Can I ask a question? Why that we're talking from Yom Tov to Shabbos, and it says the last blowing of the shofar was so that people would stop malacha.
Yeah, and you get skila.
Yeah, but why are they doing malacha on Yom Tov? Is it Chol Hamoed maybe they're talking about?
Okay, good question. We're talking about Chol Hamoed. We're not talking about that today was Yom Tov. We're talking about Shabbatei Chag means inside the Yom Tov. Could be Chol Hamoed, exactly. It was Chol Hamoed. Yes. Says the Gemara, the Mishnah does not follow Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanya Rabbi Yehuda says, even though I agree with the number, but I disagree with how you count it, because I hold that each series of 3 is considered one mitzvah, not that each blast is a mitzvah. Tanya not less than 7, but a multiple of 3, so that's 21. The a maximum of 16 sets, which is 48. So no, we agree on the total number, we just don't agree about how you calculate the mitzvah. Now, what's the difference with Sunsi? At the end of the day, they're both blowing the same amount. What's the argument? If you just have it's Kia true, it's Kia achasi, it's considered one mitzvah. And the bonus of it, Kia lechud, v'tru lechud, each one is a mitzvah on its own. My time with Rabbi Yehuda, how come Rabbi Yehuda counts each one as a mitzvah? It says in Pasuk, uskatem trua, it says in Pasuk you should blow a trua. So that sounds like clearly because that's Kia, and then there's a trua. So we see there's two separate things. So we see the uskatem trua by saying that the trua is a blowing uskatem trua. We use the word katem for the word trua. It tells you that it's all part of the same mitzvah. That's what he's saying. Yeah, let's get the parentheses. And so it's one mitzvah. Rabbanan said, no, you know what? It's 2 separate mitzvahs. So why is the Torah worded in such a way? Uskatem trua. Tell you that every trua requires a tkiyah before it and tkiyah afterward. So we have 3 truas in the Torah. 3 truas became 9 sounds because each trua requires a tkiyah before and a tkiyah after. That's 9. And since we don't know what trua is, whether it's shvarim, whether it's trua, whether it's 2 together, and that's how we get to 30. Because you have 3 sets of shvarim trua, which makes it 12, and then 3 sets of either shvarim or trua, and each one has a tkiyah before and after, it makes it 30. So Rabbanan, they said that's what we need it for. So Rabbanan, and Rabbi Yehuda, how does he know? Rabbi Yehuda lefanel achlem minolei nafkol. He learned the word shenis. It says uskatem trua shenis a second time, and because it says the word shenis, that word is extra to tell you then that the tkiyah always precedes a trua. Rabbanan in my tamayu, what's the spot of the Rabbanan? The Chasiv, it says when you want to invite the people to come and hear your Moshe Rabbeinu speak. So it says, Tisku v'loy tri. We should only do tkiyah and not do trua. The Sukkah Daf Tkiya through Achas. If you tell me it's one mitzvah, so what do you mean? If you're telling me that every time you have to blow, there's one mitzvah. A mitzvah is a set of 3. And why, when it comes to inviting the call to come and hear Moshe Rabbeinu, we only did half the mitzvah? Key without the truah. Amar Achman, the palgad mitzvah over the palgad loyava. You want only half the mitzvah, only the key and not the truah. Is that that key is separate, truah separate, and therefore he says here I only want you to do one. Rabbi Yehuda says, what are you talking about? That wasn't a mitzvah. That was mainly Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to call all the Yidden, housing to summon all the Yidden to him. So he had to make these blasts. Don't do the mitzvah. I'm talking about when there's a mitzvah. But Abbanan Simonuhu, Rachmana Shabbat mitzvah. You're right, it's only a simon. But the Torah counts it as a mitzvah. So who said the following? Kana said, Ein bein tkiya l'trua v'leklum. Who says that you're not allowed to pause at all between tkiya and trua? And the only pause you're allowed to make then is only enough to take a breath if you had to breathe, and that's it. Come on, Rabbi Yehuda. In other words, if you follow Rabbi Yehuda, it's one mitzvah, then you have to. If you follow Rabbi Yehuda, that it's one mitzvah, so then you're not allowed to pause at all, other than taking a breath to breathe. You're not allowed to pause. So when that Kahana said that you shouldn't pause between the Tkiya and Trua, it followed Rabbi Yehuda. Saying about a Pshita, isn't that obvious? Who else could it be? It can't be the Rabban. Rabban is 3 separate mitzvahs. Of course, you're allowed to pause between one and the next. So Rav Kahana will say this thing obviously follows the Rabban. No. There's an argument between Rabbi Yechon and Bavu. Rabbi Yechon says you can spread out the 9 sounds blast that you have to from the Torah throughout the entire day. He says Shama Teisha Kiyas B'Teisha Shaz B'Yom Yatzat. You spread out the 9 kiyas throughout the 9 hours of the day, not a problem, because they don't have to be together. Rabbi Bavu says no, you're not allowed to pause between them long enough to blow the entire set. You're allowed to have a pause, but there's a limit how much you can pause. So we would have thought that maybe Rav Kahana was trying to just say, don't behave like Rabbi Yechon, that you can pause as long as you want. Behave like Rav Abba, that you should only pause a little bit. So maybe Taka is going to Chachamim, and he meant you can pause a little bit. So it's the wording. You shouldn't pause at all. Obviously, by using the word v'lo klum, he meant you can only pause enough to breathe, and that's it. So he's following Rabbi Yehuda, even though the halacha Chachamim, he's following Rabbi Yehuda. This is the Gei Halacha L'Maisa today. Big Machlek is the pasuk when you blow Shvarim Trua, the set Tashrat Kia Shvarim Trua Kia. Are you allowed to pause between the Shvarim Trua or not at all? Based on this Gemara here, if you hold that if you follow this, that this only goes according to Rabbi Yehuda, that means according to Chachamim, you are allowed to have a pause. So maybe, or what would hold the Kodesh Chamim? You're allowed to have a little pause and run through, or because we see from here, whenever it's mitzvah achas, whenever it's one mitzvah, you're not allowed to pause at all, and unless you catch a breath, but you shouldn't pause at all. And since we do shvarim and trua, because we say that perhaps when the Torah says trua means a person first he takes his long sobs before he sobs properly, the staccato sound. So maybe you shouldn't pause at all. That's why we have 2 different customs between Kiyas the Miyushav and Kiyas the Mulmud.